Hi guys! Okay, so here's another little work that we're going to do with friction, an understanding of friction and how it affects the movement and the force being used on different objects. Okay, what we've got here, we've got something called an interactive glossary, and we're going to look at some different pictures and things that we have about friction. Okay, so like for instance, when a football moves over a surface, it becomes slower and slower until it finally comes to rest, and that's because the friction between the ball and the grass. And when they say football, they obviously mean soccer, because you'll see that from the picture here. But you can see as the ball is kicked, it's the friction that's coming up from the grass that's causing the ball to stop. Shorter grass is going to create less friction than taller grass. The friction works against the motion of the ball that ends up causing it to stop. So let's watch it one more time here. So again, the friction of the grass is causing the ball to stop and come, or at least slow down and then come to a stop. For those of you that do play soccer, you know when you play on short turf, the ball is going to move much faster and greater distances than if you were playing on a soccer field with longer grass. And so that concept applies here too. Okay, let's see here. We're going to watch a very short video on friction.
At the end of the ride, the cars come rushing into the unloading area, where the brakes bring them to a screeching stop. The brakes work because of a force in nature called friction. Friction is caused by two surfaces rubbing together. It slows the motion of the two objects. So the brakes of cars and trucks work because of friction. The brake drums rub against the wheels and slow them down. You are able to stop your bicycle because of friction between the brakes and tire. One of the products of friction is heat. Next time you're riding your bike, touch the tire and brakes after you have had to stop quickly. You'll feel the heat of friction. If you rub your hands together briskly, you can feel the heat of friction. Friction is important to us in many ways. If there was no friction, we would not be able to stop. In fact, it is friction that allows us to move in the first place. Without it, things that were moving wouldn't stop, and things that were at rest wouldn't be able to move.
Okay. So on that video, you guys saw an example of rubbing your hands together, and maybe some of you might have done that whenever you were watching the video. When you rub your hands together, you guys know you have little grooves in your hands and your fingers that, like your fingerprints and this on your skin. It's not completely smooth. And when we start rubbing those together, it's creating heat. So that's why in the wintertime, when we rub our hands together, it's creating heat for our hands to warm them up. So that's why you often see a lot of people doing that. You know, like snow skiers, they have really smooth surfaces on the bottom of their skis in order to create the least amount of friction possible for them, so that way it allows them to move smoothly over top of the snow. Cars and different moving vehicles, you know, you saw that picture of the roller coaster there. They have brakes on them, and so the brake's job is whenever you want to slow down your car or your vehicle, you start up to apply the brakes, and these brake pads rub up against the wheel and causing it to slow down. Okay, otherwise it would keep moving on. Okay, we got a couple pictures here we're going to look at. The friction that takes place on this picture obviously is the wheel on the road. Okay, the truck moves because of the friction that exists between the wheels and the road, and then we know that we have that truck has brake pads that will help to slow down the truck if needed, or when it's needed. Another picture we have, snails. Okay, we know that whenever, if you've ever seen a snail, you'll be able to tell that there's it's called a mucus trail. It sounds kind of gross, but what it is, it's just a slimy substance that comes and secretes from the snail, and it basically allows the snail to move over rough surfaces and makes crawling easier for them. So it's kind of like if you guys were to create a slimy substance and leave a slimy substance underneath your feet wherever you walked, it's kind of the same thing for a snail. and that allows them to move over rough surfaces. So you can see this is a tree, you know, the tree trunk, or we've got some bark here. That's a pretty rough surface, but because the snail secretes a mucus, that kind of helps him to move and glide along. And even though they're moving slowly, it helps them to move more smoothly. And it reduces that mucus reduces the friction between their body and the tree. And here we got another example where we have the tires. We know that bicyclists will they have brakes on their bicycles too. We've got friction that occurs between the wheel and the pavement, and so that is able to keep the bicycle in a steady motion but then slow down whenever the brakes are applied. Okay, so that's just a little bit more about friction and your understanding of friction. The less amount of friction that you have, the faster and more smoothly something's able to move. The more friction that you have, so a rougher surface, that creates the least amount, or that creates more friction for something to move or not move. It's going to cause it to slow down. Okay, all right, thanks.